Hello, hello, hello. It's 5 o'clock New York time, and every day we come to you live on the streaming web. Oh, my God, and I've got a great story for you. You know, in all of the noise with the trade wars and Kim Yum Nunchucks, who's a minor league player, by the way, and getting a lot more PR than he deserves. Of course, when you're part of a production company, that's what production companies do. They get loser boozers and they make, drug users and make heroes out of them. And Kim Yum Nunchuck's nothing but a mass murderer. He's a dictator. He should be stamped out. He shouldn't be on his way to a meeting with Donald Trump. He should be on his way to the Hague in handcuffs, facing war crimes and crimes against humanity. But that's a screwed up world we live in, and I just can't help it. But you can't either. But a far more important story, one that is not getting reported, is the fact that the Chinese are making great inroads in the South China Sea. They are claiming territory north and south. They are claiming territory by the Philippines, and they're extending their reach as a massive military buildup. In fact, very soon, the Chinese Navy will be bigger than the U.S. Navy. Now, that has all been encouraged because Donald Trump wants to turn America inward, and we're not the police of the world, and it's not our job to police the world. Well, fine. China says, hey, no problem. You don't want to be part of the Trans-Pacific Partnership? We'll be glad to lead the trade, and everyone come trade with us. And you don't want to, don't worry about the little South China Sea, a third of the land mass of the planet Earth in population. We'll take care of it, no problem. Thank you, Donald. Yeah, you concentrate on Kim Yum Nunchucks. And collusion is no collusion. And make America great again. We'll use that steel you don't want from us, and we'll just build the mightiest Navy ever known. Now, one event that happened was there is an incredible islands that the Chinese are building. What they are doing is they're building by dredging islands in China, in the South China Sea, and setting up military bases on them. And there's a place called Woody Island, and it's now China's largest military outpost in the South China Sea. And the Chinese have now landed on that in a very long runway their nuclear bomber. Just to let you know they could do it. It's the H-6K, and it is basically, they did the same thing on Fiery Cross Reef, Mischief Reef, and what's happening, these partially artificial islands are equipped with airstrips and hangars large enough to house their strategic nuclear bombers. And what's happening is that they are engaging, occupying land, interfering in sea routes, and making their presence felt. Now, the reality is the Americans do not have sufficient military might, because it's overstretched, to go ahead and stop them. Okay, so they are just moving into a free area, and they're doing, are just moving forward. And you remember that all 5 of the Philippines military bases under the that were due for development under the Philippines Defense Cooperation Agreement are covered by the combat radius of now the South China Sea-based H-bombers. In other words, in the mate and checkmate and counter moves, the Chinese are now encircling their neighbors. Okay, and U.S. Navy's forward position in the position now is vulnerable to precision strikes. So that means what's happening is the U.S. military is actually under direct threat for the first time by the Chinese military. And this is something that's been ignored. This is something that the U.S. Under Trump does not take very seriously. You need to listen to me. The biggest problem we face is the expansion of the Chinese military, okay? They have the potential to become the other alternative superpower. They are outclassing us in trade because we've pulled on trade agreements. We've now started a trade war, so we're driving Europeans to them. They have made inroads into Venezuela. We put sanctions against them. They put cash there in the terms of billions. They are moving into Africa big time. So now all of a sudden, you've got a situation that China is becoming a mighty military power, and no one's paying any attention. And it is a situation that has accelerated greatly in the Trump administration, because Trump has made the mistake of playing his hand and made it very clear that he's not interested in U.S. military expansionism, and he wants to bring U.S. military home. And it's one of these situations is that China is now building these bigger and bigger ships with bigger capacity, and it's basically, into these boats that have air-to-air missiles, air torpedo systems. They are nuclear capacity, nuclear ready, and they're now beginning to make domestically made aircraft carriers, and they have been successful in testing them. They are putting up these artificial islands, very clever. What they're finding is shallow reefs and shallow spots in the South China Sea. And all of a sudden, it may be the territorial waters of another country. It doesn't make any difference to them. They're putting a military base on it. They're dredging the islands. No one can stop them. There's a time when the U.S. would have, but not now. And then the dredged island becomes a military base. Now they start putting military hardware, capacity, aircraft there, and they're extending their power throughout the entire region while America is absolutely sleeping. And this is a crisis unfolding. Now, we've been concentrating on Kim Nunchucks. The guy's a joke. I mean, from a military standpoint, he is not the great threat. China has ICBMs that can hit every target in the United States of America. They have thousands of nuclear warheads. They have bombers capable of carrying nuclear weapons. They have anti-aircraft missiles. They have stealth bombers. They are building a mighty military that's becoming formidable. They are putting a vast amount of their money into this military, and they're extending it. They're becoming the major power player in the South China Sea. They can easily threaten both Japan and South Korea. That's why Kim Nunchucks is their barking dog, see? Remember, Kim Nunchucks grew a hairy set of balls after he visited China. And all of a sudden they have a strategy of engaging Donald Trump. They're going to give him the Nobel Peace Prize. They're going to keep their nukes. And the one thing China does not want is a unified Korea that now puts American forces on their border. They're very, very smart strategically. And this is the game that's going on here. Remember, militarily, they were a third-rate joke power. That is no longer the case. And China is basically moving quickly into establishing its military presence. Now, first it is in China, and then it's on the neighboring countries to China, and now it's in the South China Sea, and they're now threatening, the whole area. And this ploy of building these islands is a military tactic we've never seen before. Now, all of a sudden, China can establish bases on other people's territorial waters without invading their land, and they now threaten the U.S. Navy's forward presence in the region. And this gets right up to the Philippines. Okay, that was hotly contested territory in World War II, if you might remember. And that means that U.S. forces are now within harm's way. We're talking about Kim Nunchucks able to fire a missile to Guam. Well, no one talked about the fact that China can easily do that and more. That China has now targeted all of our forward bases in the Pacific, and that they are moving greatly to outgun us, outman us, outtroop us, outweaponize us, outbase us. And this is just an example of when you concentrate on the art of the deal, the con, when you're concentrating on making yourself great again, when you're concentrating on a minor player like Kim Nunchucks, in that vacuum, people move in, okay? And China's saying, well, okay, yeah, you're worried about his 6 nukes? No problem, baby, you keep on worrying about it. And you're worried about his rattly-tattly, ICBM that might be able to make it to Guam, maybe not, no problem. We can hit any target we want within a 20-meter accuracy. We have bombs that will put Kim Nunchuck's firecrackers to shame. We have a mighty military that now can challenge your president of the Pacific. They are about to have, are you hearing me? In 10 years, they will have a military greater than the United States. Okay? They will have more ships. They are building aircraft carriers like there's no tomorrow. They are building bases, bombers, stealth planes. And now all of a sudden, what was kind of like Chinese rattly shit is becoming formidable weapons. They are expanding greatly. They have a lot of help from their good friends, the Russians. There's been a great expansion of technology. No one really, by the way, has a handle on the nuclear capacity. We kind of engaged Russia on nuclear weapons and the START treaty and all that, and got some pretty good numbers. The reality is the Chinese nuclear, rocket, and military buildup has been so fast and so secret and so widely dispersed that we don't have a really good idea of what's going on, but they constantly surprise us. All of a sudden, they roll out a Chinese-made aircraft carrier. Whoa, I mean a formidable one. All of a sudden, they've got stealth fighters. All of a sudden, they got the ICBMs capable of hitting and targeting any place on the planet Earth. Their nuclear buildup is not even categorized. CIA does not have good numbers on that except to say that it's massive. One of the things China is doing that in a stealth mode that no one's understand is China's engaged in the biggest military buildup in the world. They are engaged in the biggest expansion of their military presence in islands in the South China Sea. They are building formidable weapon systems. They are building their army. They are modernizing their weapon systems, and they are coming of age. By the way, another thing that's not getting a lot of publicity, China may be far ahead of everybody in the space-based weapons race. Now, that was, you remember Ronald Reagan's Great Frontier, and something nobody dealt with, the Star Wars. Well, Star Wars is a reality, and the Chinese are now planning a mission to the moon. We're not. The Chinese are planning a manned space station, which will be military, of course. We're talking about closing ours down. Donald Trump says, yeah, it costs too much money. We can't afford it. I mean, do you know how expensive it is to build these golf courses? I mean, those are the people who want. Who wants space stations in space? We'll make it private. China goes, oh, you're going to privatize it? No problem. We're going to militarize it. So they're taking advantage of Donald Trump's naivety. They're taking a great advantage of the fact that the U.S. military might has been severely weakened, and Donald Trump is not building a military to engage worldwide. You hear what I said? And China wants to withdraw, like from Syria. He wants to withdraw from the trouble spots. He's probably willing to let the Russian and the Chinese move. The Chinese going, hey, no problem. You got a problem down here in the Caribbean? Why don't we come in there and help those poor people? You guys need to stay there and build that wall. So as China is expanding outward, America is walling itself in, okay? Now, we've made that mistake many times. It has led to some pretty brutal wars, and we're doing the same thing again. We are not understanding that both the conventional and nuclear and space-based Chinese buildup. We're not understanding that they are going to take over, the entire Pacific area. I mean, they are really moving quickly to militarize. South China Sea, you're talking the Philippines, you're talking Japan, you're talking South Korea, you're talking some very important allies of ours that are going to fall under the Chinese sphere of influence. Japan is assessing itself and saying, well, if we don't have a relationship with America, we might as well join the winning side. And China relationships with Japan have been expanding. The same thing with South Korea. The guy wants peace and he wants love. And he's perfectly willing to sell out his country and his military if he can get a promise of peace from the Chinese. None of the powers, the Philippines, Japan, South Korea, can possibly engage the Chinese, and they know it. Now, the problem is they relied upon America for the defenses, and Donald Trump's made it very clear that he's not interested in all these foreign damn places anyway. And a big blow was the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Okay, that really needed American presence in there to balance it out. It really needed our influence. We walked away, and we handed all of the Pacific trade to Europe and to Japan and to Korea, led by the Chinese. And that is a mistake that we will deeply regret in the future. Donald Trump's anti-trade policies are we should say, a simplistic businessman. Donald Trump has never been a successful international businessman. He has franchised his name on international projects, but that's not the same as being involved in international trade when you sell bars of soap with your image on it. That's not like the same thing of doing manufacturing on $1 billion scale. So we've got a president who doesn't even understand this. He is not a party to trade negotiations. As you can see, he's a party to sanctions. He is not a party to expansion American military presence around the world, but bringing it in. He even said that, with the situation with Kim Jong-un in North Korea, that if there's a monetary situation, America doesn't want to participate, and he expects the other players, Japan and South Korea, to pay up. Well, the Chinese said, listen, we don't mind helping either. So understand that there's a vacuum being created as America turns isolationist, as America turns anti-trade. What's happening? The Russians go, the Chinese go, we believe in free trade. We love you. Let's see if we can do some deals here. And if you want us to guarantee you militarily, we'll be glad to do mutual defense pacts with you. And we are a military power, and we're coming on stream, and we are expanding to our role as the next emerging superpower. So America's kind of doing what England did, and we kind of turned within. And England did that with disastrous results, and now they're down to basically England and half of Ireland. And barely holding on to Northern Ireland, I might mention. So now you got a situation, America doing the exact same mistake. We've basically ceded the Middle East to the Russians. We are pulling out of all agreements. We are in trade wars, and basically China is doing just the opposite. China's saying, we don't want trade wars, we want trade pacts. And they are starting to do trade deals in Africa. They are starting to do trade deals with Japan. They are moving into deals with South Korea right now, Vietnam. It's becoming a major manufacturing hub for them. And, where goes the Chinese businessman also goes the Chinese military. So you now got a situation where Chinese military expansion is also led by trade expansion, is led by, their influence, their banking, their money, and they got a lot of money to throw around. And so as we as Americans turn within, concentrate on what I call stupid shit, China understands the real game. China is far more sophisticated in leadership than ours are in trade. Their leaders are frankly much smarter than we are. And you want to know the real truth? They are taking advantage of what they regard as a very vain, very primitive president who lacks finesse and lacks understanding. And the Kim Yum Numchucks experience that. They go, oh, wait a minute. We buy him Peking duck in a golden room. You massage the shit out of his ego. He sits with a despot and announces how great he is because the art of the deal got him to an agreement to give up his rockets and his nukes. Ha, 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 ha. Perfect. Game, set, match. Play the stupid. Meanwhile, China's going, you concentrate on Kim Yum Numchucks, and we're going to build another base, and another one, and another one. We're putting more nuclear-capable bombers on these islands. We're establishing bases there. We're putting military hardware there. We're putting missile systems there, rocket systems. And basically, there's been a great area-wide, involving large landmass of the planet Earth that the Chinese are expanding into. And the United States is like, well, you shouldn't do that, China. And we've had our we've had our people trying to mention it, but there's not Jim Mattis warns consequences if Beijing keeps militarizing the South China Sea. Well, exactly what is the consequences? Okay, in other words, he said that the U.S. strategy in the region is rooted on the principle of realism. Realism is the key word, and shared interest. Okay. Realism means they understand we can't control the region anymore, I'm telling you. And there is more China's more willing to confront America under our good friend Donald Trump. And, America's response has been a joke. And, the Chinese are militarizing the disputed islands. See, first they had the disputed islands. Then they went and dredged to make the islands bigger and then take that land. No one did anything. No one did anything as islands that were clearly part of Japan, clearly part of the Philippines, from dawn. They're just using some obscure, we had somebody took a piss on the islands, so it must be ours. And what's happening is the Chinese expansion, although there's been some rhetoric, has gone basically unnoticed. A couple times we have put some of our military ships through the areas, try to open up shipping lanes that are long becoming disused. But the basic situation is that China is taking advantage of these barrier islands. They are moving on to them. Now, to say, no, you shouldn't do it, and these islands are disputed, doesn't mean shit. China's saying, yeah, you're right, no problem. Here, have some Peking duck in the golden room. Here's a golden fortune cookie. Donald, you are great. And island after island after island, they are militarizing, and we are, other than rhetoric, not doing shit about it. And so what we've got is their activities have become much more aggressive, and our military is very concerned about it. But the problem is, you got this guy up there called Donald Trump. He goes, well, What's the name of that island? Never heard of it. Is there a golf course there? So it's beyond his realm of experience. It's beyond his experience. And this is becoming very much noticed by other people. Now, the main concentration of this administration has been Kim Yum Nunchuck, who's a joke as a military power compared to the Chinese. The Chinese are going, this is great. Keep the idiot jerking around with Kim Yum Nunchuck. Those guys will negotiate for another 20 years. Donald Trump will get his Golden Peace Prize and try to use it for the election. But there's nothing of sustenance there. We're not giving up shit. And, it's kind of like, you're paying attention to the barking dog, which is North Korea. But the question is, who's at the other end of the leash? And the answer to this is Russia from start to finish. Kim Yum Nunchuck would not develop a nuke without Chinese approval. He would not be firing rockets, over Japan and towards Guam without Chinese approval. What you need to understand, most people do not understand, is that it is China that is behind this, and this is the puppet master. Kim Nunchuck, he's an errand boy. This guy is a joke. So the reality is that they're moving all the way to India. By the way, India does not see the Indo-Pacific region as a strategic place, okay? And they prefer not to be involved in this mess, which means that Kim Yum Nunchuck is the showman. But the real game here is the Chinese. And I'm telling you, they are moving at alarming rates, building their military, mainly their Navy. They are building at an alarming rate at taking over island after island. And let me tell you, when you look at a map, it's really clever. They are not stupid people. I mean, when you're doing with Kim Yum Nunchuck, you're dealing with a bit of a joke. I mean, let's be honest with each other. You're dealing with Syria, Assad in Syria. His greatest accomplishment was the invention of the barrel bomb. He might get a payoff. He might use plastic explosives, and he might get a peace prize for that. And like Yasser Arafat did. And so the reality is that, we're looking at carriers that are aircraft carriers that are based on a Russian design. And they are, using the ski jump kind of runways on those carriers. Very sophisticated stuff. And in terms of the number of ships, China already has the largest navy by way of ships. Now, they're way behind in combat readiness and in technology, but they understand that problem, and they're investing a huge amount of money in correcting it. And they are now staking claim to the entire South China Sea. And they are now moving into part of the Pacific Ocean and the Indian Ocean. And these are known as provocative actions. And I'm told that China discussion, when it comes up, and it comes up about the movement into the Indian Ocean and the Pacific, gets a yawn from Donald Trump at the meetings. He's pretty much watching CNN on this. And now, two U.S. Navy warships sailed near the South China Sea islands claimed by China, and that is after the Chinese put nuclear-capable bombers and deployed missiles there. So basically, they put nuclear bombers on the island, they put missiles on the island, and we did a pass-by and a salute and waved at them. Well, that'll scare them, huh? I mean, we are moving into a very dangerous area, and this is something that is being totally ignored by the Trump administration. It's something that is totally not understood. Now, you're going to hear a lot about this trade bullshit because it's part of the Donald Trump live reality TV show, The Oval Office. And you are going to hear more about Kim Yum Nunchuck, and I guarantee you they're going to time meetings and release of information to carry them right up to the election. And the Peace Prize should be, slotted in there at the proper timing for that. And this is Donald Trump's strategy to save the House, to enlighten his base and light a fire in their asses and get them out. And the same thing with these stupid-ass trade deals. He's making, listen to me. We need our allies in this battle, okay? We need the Japanese. We need the North Koreans. He's putting sanctions against both of them. We need Canada. We need Europe. And we're not getting that. So I am warning you that Donald Trump, as he plays the Kim Yum Nunchuck's reality TV card and has the meeting, and meeting 1, meeting 2, meeting 3, and every meeting's going to come back with some great thing. Kim Yum Nunchuck has agreed that we're going to put a Trump Tower, and we're going to also, he's going to also give up his nukes, and we're going to pick him up in another 6 months. And I have personally guaranteed his safety. Let me ask you something. If you were Kim Yum-Numchucks, would you want a man like Donald Trump guaranteeing your safety and your survivability? I mean, would you believe him? Members of our own staff made the Libya analogy. It's like Gaddafi came to a horrible end, I might add, after they had a deal with America. Name me a country that made a deal with America that didn't regret it in the end. I mean, Shah of Iran had a deal. Vietnam, anyone? Remember the people on the roof trying to get onto a helicopter to get to an aircraft carrier before their enemies came to them and reprogrammed their brain. So America's guarantee is not something you want to spend, okay? It's not something that is a good currency, should we say? And Kim Yum-Chuck knows that. But he's got a guarantee from the Chinese, and he knows that. So they're just going to mouse around with Donald Trump, keep him occupied, give him his little ditty for the campaign. And meanwhile, the real end game here is in the distraction. The Rouge is China is taking over the Pacific Ocean, the South China Sea, and the Indian Ocean, and they're going to divide up the planet Earth. They will arise in the next 5 years as the next superpower, and they are building their arsenal, they're building their power base as we are sleeping. And that's all because of Donald Trump worried about Kim Yum-Numchuck and his slingshots.